You don't notice it at first. It never arrives like a storm, never crashes into your life with noise or violence. It slips in quietly, like a shadow stretching across the floor at the end of a long day, barely visible, until it has already taken the room. You wake up with the same intentions you had yesterday, telling yourself this will be different. This will be the day you finally take control, finally move, finally become something more than what you were. And yet somehow, by the time night falls, nothing has changed. Not in any way that matters. And the terrifying part is not the failure itself. It's how normal it begins to feel. Because this is how years are stolen from you. Not in dramatic collapses, not in catastrophic decisions, but in small, repeated moments of surrender. You scroll when you should act. You delay when you should decide. You hesitate when you should move. And each time, it feels harmless. Each time, it feels justified. Just 5 more minutes. Just one more break, just one more day to prepare. And slowly, without resistance, you train yourself into a life of postponement. You become someone who is always about to begin, but never actually begins. And I know this because I've lived it. I've sat in that quiet space between intention and action, convincing myself that thinking was progress, that planning was movement, that tomorrow was guaranteed. But tomorrow is a liar. Tomorrow is the most dangerous illusion you will ever believe in, because it gives you permission to waste today. It whispers comfort into your ear while silently eroding your future. And you let it. You let it happen over and over again, until one day you look back and realize you didn't just waste time. You wasted momentum. You wasted opportunities. You wasted versions of yourself that had the courage to become something greater, but were buried under hesitation. Understand this clearly. Your life is not being destroyed by a single decision. It is being shaped by your daily patterns. And those patterns right now are weak. Not because you are incapable, not because you lack intelligence or potential, but because you have allowed comfort to become your default setting. You wake up and reach for distraction before you even reach for purpose. You fill your mind with noise before you give it direction. You let the world decide your focus before you take ownership of it. And then you wonder why you feel stuck, why you feel behind, why you feel like something is missing. What's missing is control. What's missing is discipline. What's missing is the ability to say no to what is easy and yes to what is necessary. And that ability is not something you are born with. It is something you build, or something you avoid building. And right now, if you're honest with yourself, you've been avoiding it. You've been choosing the path that requires the least resistance, the least effort, the least discomfort. And in doing so, you've been quietly negotiating away your future. Because every time you choose comfort over action, you are reinforcing a version of yourself that cannot be trusted. You are telling your mind, I don't follow through. You are telling your future, I am not ready. And eventually, that becomes your identity. Not the person you could be, but the person you repeatedly prove yourself to be. That is the silent theft. That is how years disappear without you even realizing it. There is no alarm. There is no warning. There is only repetition. Day after day, the same choices, the same habits, the same excuses dressed in different words. And time keeps moving. It does not slow down for your confusion. It does not pause for your doubts. It does not care about your intentions. It only responds to your actions. And if your actions are weak, your results will be weak. That is not cruelty. That is reality. And reality does not bend to how you feel. It responds to what you do. So when you tell yourself, I just need more motivation, understand that what you're really saying is, I am waiting for a feeling to do what I already know I should be doing. And that is a dangerous place to live. Because feelings are inconsistent. They rise and fall, they shift and change, they disappear when you need them the most. Discipline does not. Discipline shows up when you don't feel like it. Discipline moves when you are tired, when you are uncertain, when you are not ready. And that is why discipline builds lives, while motivation only starts them. But you've been relying on motivation. You've been waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect mindset, the perfect version of yourself to arrive before you take action. And that version never comes, because it is built through action, not before it. You don't become ready and then start. You start, and that is how you become ready. But that requires you to face something uncomfortable. It requires you to accept that you have been wasting time. not occasionally, not accidentally, but consistently. And that is a hard truth to swallow, because it forces you to take responsibility. It removes the comfort of blame. You can't point at your circumstances. You can't point at other people. You can't point at luck or timing or opportunity. You have to look at yourself and say, I chose this. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. And if you chose it, you can choose differently, but only if you stop lying to yourself. Only if you stop pretending that you have more time than you actually do, because you don't. Time is not something you own. It is something you are given, moment by moment. And once a moment passes, it is gone. You cannot reclaim it. You cannot redo it. You cannot negotiate it back into your life. It is finished. And yet you treat it as if it is disposable. You spend it on things that do not matter, on distractions that do not serve you, on habits that do not build anything of value. And then you complain that you are not where you want to be. But where you are is a direct result of how you have been spending your time. That is the equation. That is the truth. And it does not change for anyone. So if you continue on this path, if you continue to drift, to delay, to distract yourself from what needs to be done, then the outcome is already decided. Nothing changes. Not next week, not next year, not in 5 years. You remain in the same place, with the same frustrations, the same regrets, the same quiet understanding that you could have done more, but didn't. And that is the real pain. Not failure, not struggle, but regret. The kind that sits with you in silence, the kind that shows up when everything is quiet and forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you could have been. That gap is built one wasted day at a time. And right now, you are either widening it or closing it. There is no neutral. There is no standing still. You are always moving in one direction or the other, either toward growth or toward stagnation, either toward discipline or toward decay. And the direction you move in is determined by what you do next. Not tomorrow, not later, now, this moment. Because this moment is all you actually have, and what you choose to do with it will define everything that comes after. So stop pretending that this is not urgent. Stop acting like you can afford to wait. You can't. The version of you that you want to become is not waiting forever. That version is built through action taken consistently over time. And every day you delay, you push that version further away. You make it harder to reach. You make it easier to settle for less. And eventually, if you wait long enough, you stop chasing it altogether. You convince yourself that it was never realistic, never possible, never meant for you. But that is not the truth. The truth is simpler. You didn't commit. You didn't persist. You didn't do the work when it was uncomfortable, when it was inconvenient, when it required more from you than you were willing to give. And that is what needs to change. Not your goals, not your dreams, your standards. The level of behavior you are willing to tolerate from yourself. Because right now, you are tolerating too much weakness, too much delay, too much distraction. And until you raise that standard, nothing will change. You will continue to live in this cycle of intention without execution, of desire without discipline, of potential without progress. And years will continue to disappear, quietly, efficiently, without resistance, until one day you look back and realize that the life you wanted is no longer ahead of you. It is behind you, lost in the time you thought you had, but never used. You wake up to the sound of your alarm, but you don't get up, not immediately. Your hand reaches out, not with intention, but with habit. You silence it. Then you lie there, staring at nothing. Your mind isn't focused. It isn't sharp. It isn't ready. It's foggy, heavy. You tell yourself you'll get up in a minute, just 1 minute. But that minute stretches. It always does. You grab your phone, not because you need it, but because it's there. A reflex, a quiet escape before the day even begins. Notifications, messages, short videos, endless scrolling. You haven't even started your day, and you've already surrendered control of your mind. Minutes pass, then more. And before you know it, the urgency you felt last night, the promises you made to yourself, that energy, it's gone. Replaced by comfort, replaced by passivity. You finally get up, but now you're late. Not dramatically, just slightly, just enough to rush. And that rush sets the tone. You move through your morning reacting instead of leading, There is no clarity, no direction, just movement, automatic, unconscious. You eat quickly, or maybe you skip it. You check your phone again. You tell yourself you're catching up, but in reality, you're falling behind. Then the day begins. Work, study, responsibilities. You sit down with the intention to focus. You really do, but your attention is fractured. You open one task, then another tab. Then another thought interrupts, then another distraction. You tell yourself you work better under pressure, so you delay the important thing just a little longer. You'll get to it. You always do, eventually. But deep down, there's a tension building, a quiet awareness that you are not operating at your best, that you are capable of more, but not doing more. And instead of confronting that discomfort, you escape it. You check your phone again. You scroll. You refresh. You look for something, anything, to avoid the weight of responsibility. And this becomes your pattern. Not just today, every day. Small escapes, repeated, reinforced, until they are no longer choices, they are habits. And these habits are shaping you, not in some dramatic, visible way, but slowly, internally. You are training your mind to avoid difficulty, to seek ease, to prioritize comfort over growth. And then you wonder why hard things feel so hard. It's not because they are impossible. It's because you've conditioned yourself to resist them. You've built a system where distraction is easier than focus, where delay is more natural than action. And systems always win. You can have the strongest intention in the world, but if your daily system is weak, your outcomes will be weak. That is the brutal truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. So when you say you want to change, when you say you want to improve, what you are really saying is that you want a different result without changing the system that creates it, and that doesn't work. It never has. Look at your day, not what you planned, not what you hoped for, what you actually did. That is your system. That is your truth. You wake up without intention. You consume before you create. You react instead of lead. You delay instead of execute. You distract instead of focus, and then you repeat, over and over again. And each repetition makes it stronger. Each day reinforces the identity you are building. Because habits are not just actions, they are votes. Every time you choose distraction, you vote for the identity of someone who avoids. Every time you delay, you vote for someone who hesitates. Every time you quit early, you vote for someone who cannot be trusted to follow through. And after enough votes, the decision is made, not by chance, not by fate, but by you. You become that person, not because you wanted to, but because you practiced it. That's what people don't understand. You don't accidentally become disciplined. You don't accidentally become focused. And you don't accidentally become weak either. It is all trained, all repeated, all earned. Right now, your habits are earning you a life you are not proud of. Maybe it's not terrible. Maybe it's not a disaster, but it's not what you know you're capable of. And that gap, that quiet frustration, it follows you. It shows up when you're alone, when the noise stops, when there's nothing to distract you. You feel it. That sense that you are wasting something valuable. That sense that time is slipping. And you try to ignore it. You tell yourself it's okay, that you're still young, that you still have time. But that voice doesn't go away, because it's telling the truth. And the truth is simple. If you continue like this, nothing will change. Not in a meaningful way. You might improve slightly. You might have bursts of motivation. But without changing your habits, you will always return to this baseline, this level, this identity. That's why you feel stuck. Not because you don't know what to do. You do. You've read it. You've heard it. You've told yourself countless times what needs to change. Wake up earlier. Focus more. Stop wasting time. Be disciplined. It's not a knowledge problem. It's an execution problem. And execution is built on habits. Not feelings, not inspiration. Habits. What you do when you don't feel like doing anything. What you choose when no one is watching. What you repeat when it's boring, when it's hard, when it's uncomfortable. That is who you are. Not your intentions, not your words, your patterns. And your patterns right now are holding you back. You might not want to hear that. You might want to believe that something external is the issue, your environment, your circumstances, other people. And yes, those things matter, but they are not the deciding factor, because there are people in worse situations who are moving forward, and there are people in better situations who are standing still. The difference is not what they have, it's what they do, consistently, relentlessly, without negotiation. That's what you're missing. Not opportunity, not ability, consistency. And consistency is not exciting. It's not dramatic. It's not something you feel proud of in the moment. It's repetitive. It's boring. It's uncomfortable. It requires you to do the same things over and over again without immediate reward. And that's why most people fail, because they are addicted to feeling good now, instead of building something meaningful later. They trade long-term growth for short-term comfort, every single day, and then they pay the price. Not immediately, but eventually, in the form of regret, in the form of stagnation, in the form of a life that feels smaller than it should be. That is where your current habits are leading you, not to failure in a dramatic sense, but to mediocrity, to a life that is fine but not fulfilling, stable but not strong, comfortable but not powerful. And deep down, you know that's not enough. You know you are capable of more. You feel it. That's why this bothers you. That's why this tension exists. Because there is a gap between your potential and your actions. And that gap is created by your habits. Weak habits create weak results. Strong habits create strong results. It's that simple. Not easy, but simple. And right now, your habits are weak. They are undisciplined, unfocused, reactive. And until you face that truth without excuses, without justification, without softening it, nothing will change. You will continue to wake up the same way, spend your days the same way, end your nights the same way, with that same quiet disappointment, that same promise to do better tomorrow, and that same failure to follow through, over and over again, until it becomes your life, until it becomes your identity, until it becomes your future. And by then, it will feel normal. That's the most dangerous part, not the struggle, but the normalization of weakness, the acceptance of less, the quiet decision to settle. And once you settle, you stop growing. You stop pushing. You stop becoming. And that is the real loss. Not time, but what you could have done with it. Not who you are, but who you chose not to become. You've been told your entire life that change is about trying harder, about pushing more, about finding that one surge of motivation that will finally flip the switch inside you. But that's not the truth. And deep down, you already know it. Because how many times have you felt that surge, that temporary fire, that moment where you said, "This is it," only to watch it fade within days, sometimes hours, leaving you exactly where you started, maybe even worse, because now you carry the added weight of disappointment, of broken promises to yourself, of knowing that you tried and still didn't become who you said you would be. And that's where most people stop. They conclude that something is wrong with them, that they lack discipline, that they're not strong enough, not focused enough, not built for this. But that conclusion is flawed, completely flawed, because it assumes the problem is internal weakness, when in reality, the problem is structural design. You are not failing because you are weak. You are failing because your life is set up to make failure the default outcome. And once you see that, really see it, everything changes. Because now the question is no longer, how do I push myself harder? It becomes, why is my current system producing this version of me? And that question is dangerous because it removes all illusion. It forces you to look at your environment, your routines, your triggers, your patterns, and realize that they are not neutral. They are not passive. They are actively shaping your behavior every single day, whether you notice it or not. And right now, your system is not designed for growth. It is designed for comfort, for distraction, for ease. It is optimized for short-term pleasure and long-term stagnation. And you've been trying to fight that system with willpower alone, which is like trying to swim upstream against a current that never stops. You might win for a moment. You might push forward for a day or two, but eventually you get pulled back. Not because you're weak, but because the current is stronger than your temporary effort. And that's the twist you were never taught. Willpower is not the foundation of change. Design is. The structure of your life determines the outcome of your life. Not your intentions, not your Jelania, not your bursts of motivation, your structure, your systems, your habits embedded into your environment. into your daily rhythm, into the cues that trigger your behavior without you even thinking about it. Because most of what you do every day is not a decision, it's a reaction, a conditioned response to your surroundings. You don't wake up and consciously decide to check your phone. You just do it. You don't sit down and logically choose distraction over focus. You drift into it, automatically. And that's because your environment is full of triggers that pull you in that direction. Your phone is within reach. Your notifications are active. Your workspace is cluttered. Your schedule is undefined. Your boundaries are weak. And all of these factors combine to create a system where distraction is easy and focus is hard, where delay is natural and execution is uncomfortable. And then you blame yourself for the outcome, when in reality, you are simply behaving in alignment with the system you've built or allowed to exist. And once you understand that, you realize something powerful. You don't need to become a different person to change your life. You need to build a different system that produces a different version of you, because identity is not fixed. It is the result of repeated behavior, and repeated behavior is driven by environment and structure, not just intention. So if you keep the same environment, the same triggers, the same routines, you will keep getting the same results, no matter how badly you want to change, no matter how inspired you feel in the moment, because desire without design is useless. It feels good, it sounds powerful, but it doesn't sustain action, and action is the only thing that creates change. So the real shift, the real turning point, is when you stop asking yourself, how do I feel, and start asking, what is my system producing? Because your system is always producing something. Right now, in this exact moment, it is producing your current level of focus, your current level of discipline, your current level of output. And if those levels are low, it's not because you woke up and decided to be weak. It's because your system made that outcome the easiest path. And humans will always gravitate toward the path of least resistance, not because they lack ambition, but because that is how we are wired. We conserve energy. We avoid unnecessary effort. We follow the path that requires the least friction. And your current setup has made distraction frictionless and discipline difficult. So of course you struggle. Of course you delay. Of course you feel stuck. You are operating exactly as expected within that system. And this is where most people get it wrong. They try to fight their nature instead of working with it. They try to force themselves to be disciplined in an environment that encourages laziness. They try to stay focused in a space designed for distraction. They try to build consistency on top of chaos. And then they burn out, they fail, and they conclude that they are the problem. But you are not the problem. Your system is. And systems can be changed. They can be redesigned. They can be rebuilt in a way that makes the right actions easier and the wrong actions harder. And once that shift happens, everything becomes different. Not easy, but aligned. Instead of constantly fighting yourself, you start moving with your structure. Your environment begins to support your goals instead of sabotaging them. Your habits become automatic instead of forced. And that's when real change begins. Not when you feel motivated, but when your system no longer requires motivation to function. Because the behavior you need is built into the way you live, the way you wake up, the way you work, the way you move through your day. And this is the reality most people never reach, because they are too focused on intensity and not focused enough on design. They chase big moments instead of building stable systems. They want dramatic transformation instead of consistent execution. And the truth is, transformation is not dramatic. It is quiet, repetitive, almost invisible in the moment, but unstoppable over time. And it is driven by structure, not emotion, by systems, not surges, by habits that are so deeply integrated into your life that they happen whether you feel like it or not. And that is the level you need to reach, not a higher level of motivation, but a stronger level of structure. Because once your structure is right, your behavior follows, your results follow, your identity follows, and suddenly, the person you've been trying to become doesn't feel so far away. Not because you changed overnight, but because you changed the mechanism that produces your daily actions. And that is the twist. That is the new reality. You don't rise by force. You rise by design. You don't win by pushing harder. You win by building smarter. And until you accept that, you will keep repeating the same cycle, the same effort, the same frustration, the same temporary progress followed by regression. Because nothing fundamentally changed. But the moment you shift your focus from trying harder to designing better, everything opens up. because now you are no longer relying on a fragile resource like motivation. You are building a stable system that carries you forward even when you are tired, even when you are distracted, even when you don't feel like it. And that is how you stop wasting years, not by trying to be stronger every day, but by creating a life where strength is built into the structure itself, where discipline is not a constant battle, but a default setting, where your future self is no longer dependent on how you feel in the moment, but on the system you have the courage to build and the discipline to maintain. There is a moment when everything goes quiet, not outside, inside. No noise, no distraction, just you and the truth you've been avoiding. It doesn't come when you're busy. It doesn't come when you're surrounded by people. It comes late, when the day is done, when the screen goes dark, when there is nothing left to hide behind. And in that silence, you feel it. Not loudly, not violently, just a weight sitting in your chest. You try to ignore it. You reach for your phone. You open something, anything, but it doesn't go away. Because this time, it's not about distraction. It's about confrontation. You are face to face with yourself, not the version you show the world, not the version you talk about, the real one, the one built by your actions, by your patterns, by your repeated choices. And for a second, you see it clearly, the gap, who you are and who you could be. It's not a small gap, it never is. It's wide, uncomfortable, heavy, and it hurts. Not because you're incapable, but because you know you didn't give everything. You know there were moments, simple moments, where you could have acted, but didn't. You could have started, but delayed. You could have pushed, but stopped. And those moments, they didn't disappear. They stacked, quietly, day after day, until they became this feeling, this quiet disappointment you carry. And the worst part is not that you failed. It's that you know you chose it. Not directly, not intentionally, but through every small decision you made to take the easier path. You chose comfort. You chose delay. You chose to escape instead of engage. And now you sit there, realizing that no one did this to you. No one forced you. No one held you back. It was you. That realization, it cuts deep because it removes every excuse. There is no one left to blame, just you. And for a moment, you feel the urge to run again, to distract, to soften it, to say, it's okay, I'll try again tomorrow. But something inside you doesn't accept that anymore. Something inside you is tired, tired of the cycle, tired of the promises that don't last, tired of starting over, again and again. You felt this before, that brief clarity, that moment where you see everything as it is. But this time, it lingers, it stays, and it forces you to sit with it, to feel it fully, the wasted hours, the lost days, the version of you that almost existed, but never fully came to life. You can see him, clearly, disciplined, focused, relentless. He's not a fantasy. He's not impossible. He's built from the same mind, the same body, the same time you have now. The only difference is what he did with it. And that realization, it's heavy, because it means the distance between you and him is not luck. It's not talent. It's action. Repeated, consistent, uncomfortable action. The kind you avoided, the kind you delayed, the kind you knew you should do, but didn't. And now you sit there, in that silence, feeling the weight of it. No distractions, no lies, just truth. Raw, clear, undeniable. You start to understand something deeper. This isn't about productivity. It's not about success in the way people talk about it. Money, status, recognition. None of that matters in this moment. What matters is integrity, the ability to trust yourself, to say you will do something and actually do it, to give your word and follow through. Because without that, nothing else holds. And right now, if you're honest, you don't fully trust yourself. Not completely, because you've broken too many small promises. You've said, I'll start tomorrow, too many times. You've said, just one more minute, too many times. And each time, it chipped away at something, slowly, quietly, until now, you feel it, that lack of alignment, that internal conflict. You want more, but your actions don't match it. You speak about change, but you don't live it consistently. And that gap, it creates tension. Constant tension. That's what you've been feeling all along. Not confusion, not lack of direction. Tension. Between who you are and who you know you could be. And tension doesn't disappear on its own. It either breaks you or it transforms you. But transformation requires something most people avoid. Stillness. Sitting in this moment, without running, without numbing it, without escaping, just feeling it, fully. Because in this discomfort, there is clarity. In this silence, there is truth. You begin to see your patterns more clearly, not as random failures, but as consistent behaviors, predictable, repeated. You see how you start strong, then fade, how you avoid the hard parts, how you negotiate with yourself, and always choose the easier option. And for the first time, you don't judge it, you just observe it. Cold, honest, direct. This is who you've been, not who you are forever, but who you've practiced being. And if it's practiced, it can be changed. But not through noise, not through hype, through awareness, through this exact moment, this quiet recognition. Because you can't change what you refuse to see. And now, you see it, clearly. The habits, the patterns, the choices, the consequences. It's all connected. Nothing random, nothing accidental, just cause and effect. And in that realization, something shifts. Not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply. You stop looking for motivation. You stop waiting for a feeling. Because you understand now. Feelings didn't get you here. Actions did. Repeated actions. And if actions built this version of you, actions can build the next one. But it will cost you something. Comfort, ease, distraction. The things you've been holding on to. The things that kept you safe, but also kept you stuck. You can't carry them forward. Not if you want to change. And that's the real decision. Not do I want a better life. Everyone says yes to that. The real question is, are you willing to let go of the habits that are keeping you where you are? Are you willing to sit in discomfort without escaping? To act without waiting? To move even when it feels heavy? Because that's what it takes. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently. And consistency is built in moments like this. Quiet, unseen, uncelebrated, where you decide, not emotionally, but deliberately, that you are done living this way, done repeating the same cycle, done betraying your own potential. That decision, it doesn't need to be loud, it doesn't need to be dramatic, it just needs to be real, and you feel it now, subtle, steady, different from before, not excitement, not hype, something deeper, resolve, a quiet understanding that this can't continue, that something has to change. And this time, it's not about trying harder. It's about being honest, brutally honest, about what you've been doing and what needs to stop. Because before you build new habits, you have to see the old ones clearly, without distortion, without justification, without comfort, just truth. And right now, in this silence, you have it, the clearest version of it you've ever had. The question is, what will you do with it? And now, everything comes back to one point. Not tomorrow, not next week, right here, this moment. Because after all the realizations, all the clarity, all the weight you just felt, none of it matters if it doesn't translate into something real, something physical, something you do. Not think about, not plan, do. This is where most people break. Not at the beginning, not in the middle, but here, at the edge of action. They understand everything. They feel everything. They promise themselves everything. And then, they go back to the same patterns, back to the same comfort, back to the same cycle that slowly drains their life without resistance. And the reason is simple. They think change is one big decision, one powerful moment, one final switch that flips everything. But it's not. It never was. Change is small, repetitive, almost invisible. It's built in the way you wake up tomorrow, the first decision you make, the second, the third, the ones no one sees, the ones that feel insignificant. That's where your future is decided. Not in grand plans, but in quiet execution. So here's the truth you need to hold on to. Not something abstract, not something motivational, something real. You don't need to fix your entire life. You don't need to become perfect. You don't need to suddenly transform into some ideal version of yourself overnight. You need to win the next decision. That's it. Just one. The next one. When the alarm rings, you get up. Not because you feel ready, but because you said you would. When the urge to scroll appears, you pause. You don't follow it immediately. You choose, even if it's just for a moment. When the hard task is in front of you, you start. Not perfectly, not completely, just enough to break resistance. These are small actions, but they are not small in consequence, because each one is a signal, a message you send to yourself. I move when I say I will. I act even when it's uncomfortable. I follow through. And over time, those signals stack. They become evidence. And that evidence builds something you've been missing. Trust. Not confidence in the loud sense, not hype. Trust. Quiet, solid, reliable trust in yourself. And once you have that, everything changes. Because now you don't rely on motivation. You rely on identity. You become someone who does what needs to be done, regardless of mood, regardless of circumstance. That's the shift. That's the foundation. And it doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. You will fail. You will slip. You will have days where you fall back into old patterns. That's not the problem. The problem is staying there. The problem is turning one mistake into a full relapse. You don't need to be flawless. You need to return, quickly, without drama, without self-pity, without excuses. Just return, again and again. That's how real change happens. Not in avoiding failure, but in refusing to stay down. And here's the lesson you need to carry forward. Your future is not something that suddenly arrives. It is something you are building right now, through what you repeat. Every habit is a brick. Every action is a layer. And whether you realize it or not, you are constructing something. A life. A version of yourself. The only question is it the one you actually want? Because if not, then something has to change. Not everything at once, just enough to shift direction, just enough to stop the drift. And that starts with awareness, which you now have. You've seen the patterns, you've felt the cost, you've recognized the gap. That's step one. Most people never get that far. They stay distracted, unaware, comfortably stuck. But you're here, and that matters. Because awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. But only if you act on it. So let me ask you something. Not as a challenge, not as pressure, just a real question. When you wake up tomorrow, who are you going to be? Not in theory, not in intention, in action. Are you going to follow the same pattern, the same habits, the same comfortable routine that keeps you where you are? Or are you going to interrupt it, even slightly, even imperfectly, but deliberately? Because that choice, that single moment, is where everything begins. And it will not feel dramatic. It will not feel powerful. It will feel small, almost insignificant. But that's how change enters your life, quietly, through decisions no one sees. So don't wait for a perfect moment. Don't wait for more clarity. You have enough, more than enough. What you need now is movement. Even if it's slow, even if it's uncertain, just move. One step, then another, then another. And over time, those steps become direction. That direction becomes momentum. And that momentum becomes a life that finally feels aligned with who you are meant to be. Not because you forced it, but because you built it. Patiently, consistently, honestly. And if something in you right now feels different, even slightly, hold on to that. Don't let it fade the way it has before. Protect it. Act on it. Turn it into something real. Because moments like this, they don't come often. And when they do, they are an opportunity. Not for instant transformation, but for a new path, a better one. One that leads somewhere meaningful, somewhere earned, somewhere you can look back on and say, I didn't waste it. And if you're walking this path, if you're choosing to build instead of drift, then you don't have to do it alone. Stay here. Keep listening. Keep reminding yourself of what matters. Not in a loud way, not in a forced way, just consistently, like a quiet voice that keeps you aligned when things get hard. So if this resonated with you, not just in your mind, but somewhere deeper, then stay connected. Subscribe, not as a commitment, as a choice, a small one, to keep showing up, to keep growing, to keep becoming, one step at a time.